what they wanted. And then so as you've seen, it's been this steady rise of support, the steady rise of enthusiasm, the steady progress of change in the country. And yet, in December 2007, last year, about a year ago now, the revolution experienced its first defeat, its first electoral defeat. Now, the 2007 elections were another important turning point. And basically what the election was, or what the vote was on, above all, was a referendum on some changes to the Constitution. It was a constitutional referendum with a whole bunch of different changes that were going to be implemented. Now, of course, the oligarchy were completely against these changes because they threatened their power base. They threatened their control of the land. They threatened their control of the banks. They threatened their control of the natural resources and the factories. They were a big threat. But of course, the one issue that everybody focused on and everybody freaked out about was eliminating term limits. That's all it was. It wasn't Chavez dictator for life. It wasn't, no more elections. It was just eliminating term limits, which, as anybody who's studied the U.S. history knows, term limits didn't even exist in the United States until after FDR. It's not a principled question whether you have term limits or not. If people want to keep voting for someone, they can vote for not. U.S. senators don't have term limits. Governors don't have term. But here, of course, the media freaked out and said, "Oh, it's because he wants to be a dictator," and blah blah blah. There's a lot of confusion in the elections. The opposition was running all kinds of ads saying, if you vote for this, they're going to take your kid away from you and train them to be communists and all this kind of stuff. And this was combined with a very effective strategy of sabotage, economic sabotage within the country. Venezuela's got all this money, all this oil money, and yet it's still a relatively poor country. There still are a lot of economic problems to be addressed. And, after 10 years, or almost 10 years at that point, of the revolution, if people still can't find milk, if people still can't get beans, if people still can't get rice, this is the basic stuff. Yes, they like the basic access to healthcare. Yes, they like the basic access to universities and so on, but there still weren't enough jobs to go around. There still wasn't decent housing for everybody. There's still all these problems. And then so with the economy still in the hands of the oligarchy, they were able to use this, and to this day they're able to use this as an important lever to try and strangle the revolution, just as they'd done during the Boss's oil lockout in 2002, 2003. They still control the banks. They still control most of the factories, the food distribution chain. All this kind of stuff that they can then use to just slowly sort of throttle the economy and wear people out. Revolutions are not a daily occurrence, and revolutions are a process above all. A revolution is when average, ordinary people realize that they have a role to play in history, that they seize their destiny into their hands. They start playing an active role in politics, people that had never done anything like that before in their lives. So, in my opinion, clearly what's happening in Venezuela is a revolution, but it's a process, and it doesn't go on forever. A revolution will either result in the transformation of society, the change of the economy and the politics and the whole structure of society, or it's going to eventually go back, to use the analogy of a river, a flooding river will eventually go back to its banks if it doesn't change the course decisively during that time when it is flooded. So there's some tiredness that has started to seep in to the people of Venezuela, to the people that have been so enthusiastic about this. And it's not about Chavez so much, because I think he still has tremendous support personally, because people see him as an honest person, as a well-meaning person, someone who really cares about the people and really wants to push things forward. But he's surrounded by a whole layer of people that are completely against what's happening there. Like I said earlier, the process has sort of been, because this coup failed, because the revolution didn't take another turn in the beginning, where the old government was completely wiped out, and not physically wiped out necessarily, but just that the whole thing collapsed and replaced by a new state, a new kind of government. The process has been expressed through the old channels, not only the old electoral channels, but also the old state bureaucracy, the old oil industry bureaucracy, which remains even to this day, even though they've gotten rid of a lot of those people. And there's also been a bit of a new bureaucracy that has grown up out of out of this. All those social programs need people to administer them. All those, government programs have all these people that are now getting good jobs with the oil money, and they're quite happy where they're at. They don't want things to go any further. And so in 2007, you finally had all this thing, all of these sort of frustrations come to the surface. Again, not so much because of Chavez, but in some measure because Chavez wasn't doing enough to stop these people around him that were sabotaging the process. Because there's three main contradictions in the revolutionary process that have been going on for quite a while here. And I'll just outline them quickly and then sort of fill in more details as we move along. One is the question of the economy, which I've already mentioned. It still is largely in the hands of private capitalists, and they're able to therefore use it. Just as in the United States, we see all kinds of factories being shut down now. We see all sorts of companies declaring bankruptcy. Perfectly good factories. Plenty of people that would like a new car, or we would like maybe a light rail system, or we could like the Ford plant over in St. Paul. All perfectly good resource for society, but because they can't make a profit off it, they're going to shut it down. Well, in Venezuela, it's not only because they can't make a profit, although that's many people have profited okay. It's because they want to put an end to this whole process. Then there's the question of the state, which I also explained a little bit, that the old government basically remains intact. You still have a national assembly, which is like our Congress. You still have the old governorships, the old mayoral structure, and these are some of the other things that were going to be changed in the referendum, which were a threat to the traditional power. So, so people might say, well, what's so bad about a national assembly or a governorship or whatever if these are people that are supporting Chavez or whatever? Well, the point is that these structures were set up in order to represent the interests of one specific sector of society. They're not structures that are set up democratically. This country is extremely democratic. The United States is extremely democratic when it comes to defending the interests of a handful of very wealthy people. But for the rest of us, it's not that democratic. And that's the same sort of situation that we have to this day in Venezuela. And third, then, is the question of political leadership, of having a political channel through which to express themselves. That is to say, of a political party. When Chavez came to power, first of all, he sort of was the leader. Well, he was the leader of this broad movement called the Movement for a Fifth Republic. It was a very amorphous thing with all kinds of different parties involved, all kinds of different people, from workers to peasants to capitalists to small business owners. It was a very amorphous, broad movement. It was an electoral machine, ultimately, to get people elected on the basis of, I like Chavez. Okay, that's their program. We're with Chavez. But what does that mean? At a certain stage, once Chavez starts talking about socialism, once Chavez starts talking about nationalizing the economy, once Chavez starts talking about all these kinds of things, certain people in that structure want to put the brakes on. They want to stop things. They think it's going too far. Their big excuse is, we don't want to anger the United States, as if the United States wasn't pissed off enough already at them, hadn't tried to overthrow them multiple times already. And so you have all kinds of economic sabotage. And although there have been some nationalizations, and especially this year, there's been some important nationalizations. They've nationalized the entire cement industry, a massive steelworks called Sidor, which is a whole topic in and of itself, the struggle around the nationalization of Sidor. The telecommunications industry, the third largest bank in the country, a big aluminum plant, a milk processing company called Lácteos de los Andes, but still, that's still not enough. Yesterday they're talking about now nationalizing Crystalex, which is a Canadian-owned gold mining company, because they're having some economic problems in Venezuela, which I'll get to in a few minutes here, which they're now realizing we have to really assert control, not just over the oil, but over everything else, over bauxite, over gold, over diamonds. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff in Venezuela. So those are the sort of the three things that have yet to be resolved: the economy, the state, and the party. Because of sabotage, you've had inflation in Venezuela, which has been really, really tremendous. Although people's wages have gone up a lot, almost every May Day, Chavez raises the minimum wage by 30% or whatever. I mean, can you imagine if we had the minimum wage raised by 30% in this country? And so that's all very good, but when you have inflation skyrocketing, because of sabotage, because the government isn't moving aggressively enough to stop that, you've had food inflation of 50